You are listening to the Pencil and Paper Podcast Network.
I'm Katrina, and I love anime.
I'm Steven, and I'm aware of anime.
But what if that affection could rub off?
Perhaps that excitement in her eyes got me curious.
I could offer up some solid anime.
I could give them a watch, just to see what all the fuss is about.
And maybe, just maybe,
I could learn to love anime too.
Welcome to Inspired by a Weeaboo. Hello and welcome back to Inspired by a Weeaboo. I am your host, Katrina, and with me is my husband, Steven.
Hello.
We just finished episode 11 and 12 of Fullmetal Alchemist. Now, the reason we did this is because 11 and 12 is a two-parter episode. So we wanted to just go ahead and finish the story. That way we could talk about the story as a whole versus just splitting it up into two separate episodes. So, Steven, what did you think?
This seemed less like a filler episode from last time. This seemed like it actually had reasonings for a lot of what was going on. And I felt like with it being a two-parter, there had to be a lot more to it. You know, like the last episode, could have been a two-parter, but then there would have been two-parter filler, so understandable as to why they rushed through it. But this seemed... I don't really feel like we progress in the story per se, but we were granted a few new wrinkles to the story, a few new elements, a few new characters that I'm assuming we'll come back around to, because the two main characters that we are introduced to in this, which are the Tringham brothers, feel like they have a bigger story, or at least feel like they could be more important later on. I could be wrong, but based on the relationship they seem to have to the Elric brothers, they seem very similar in a lot of regards. Except they know what happened to their father versus Ed now.
Yeah.
So we begin the story coming to this town, which I think was called Xenotime. I think was the name that they said it was.
Something like that.
Something like that. It's a mining town, and there was a little girl caught in some rubble. Alyssa, I think was what they called her. And obviously they come into town, they help her out. And everybody's like, oh, yay, you know, these people are awesome. And then they say that they're the Elric brothers. And I'm like, bullshit. And then they kick them out. And we're like, wait, what? And apparently the Elric brothers are already in town, according to the townsfolk. And we are introduced to these two other brothers who are fairly similar in certain regards to these brothers, because they're both blonde. They do not have any kind of automail, I remembered, attached to them, so, which should have been some red flags, but apparently no one paid any attention to that. But they were also seemed to be alchemists, and they're working on their own thing. Now, for a moment, I was starting to worry, and I know this is long before this happened, but I was starting to wonder, was there COVID protocol going on in this town? Because everyone was wearing masks. And come to find out, there's reasons for that. So
yes.
But I do want to touch on one thing before we get in too deep, because at the beginning, after we meet Alyssa and we meet some of the townsfolk, Alyssa's talking about her uncle Belcio. And there seemed to be a lot of focus on him as somebody that we need to keep an eye on, but I don't feel like his story, outside of being connected to the father, what was his name? Nash Tringham.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess I felt like there was more to him than the way they were laying it out.
Yeah, they kind of laid it out like he was going to play a bigger role, or he was going to be one of those characters that, you know, Ed and Al would have to assist them further.
Yeah.
But honestly, his role just came down to being the one to give Ed and Al that piece of information that said everything else, kind of, you know, made everything else click. set them in the right direction. And then, of course, him knowing the boys' father is what led to that. So he's just kind of the one that's an outcast in his town. So when Ed and Al are shunned, he takes them in. So I feel like that's kind of why his character was set up that way.
Yeah, I guess. It seemed like there was more to him than they were letting on. And that might have been just like a red herring because we are introduced to the main antagonist later on. But after they meet after we meet the fake brothers, the Tringham brothers, we see them performing alchemy. They can, one of them, Russell, I think is the older brother.
Mm-hmm.
He seems to also be able to use alchemy without a transmutation circle, but I felt like because he
had the fake stone.
Right. And they were under the impression that they had the Philosopher's Stone, but we come to find out that they were attempting to create a Philosopher's Stone, even though they just, at some point, eventually just dropped that and said it's a red stone. That's just what they all kind of started referring to them as.
Yes, because the Philosopher's Stone, it is one of a kind.
Mm-hmm.
So the stone that they're searching for, like, you find out how you obtain it, basically. Mm-hmm. And it is through alchemy. Like everything, is through alchemy. But it's what the process is to obtain it.
Gotcha.
So you're going to see a lot of different people who have a lot of different processes type stuff, or at least other people who have obtained them. And, we see how obviously these boys and their father were creating them. However, I don't know if you were going to touch on it, but their father and why he leaves is kind of one of those things where it's like laying a seed of you're eventually going to find out what caused him to return to his hometown just utterly destroyed as a human.
Yeah, they did kind of vaguely touch on it, but they didn't go into great detail, and I felt like there was a lot more to it than they let on. So I was assuming that somewhere down the line we would understand what happened.
Yes.
Because he seemed like he gave I won't say a vague explanation, but it was very to the point, just like, yeah, I'm just not gonna do this anymore, and kind of left it at that. And Belcio kind of seemed like, okay, well, if that's what you want to do. But like, he had questions, but he didn't press it. Yeah. So I was a little curious about that. So we'll kind of put a pin in that, and we'll come back around to it when we do see him again and we get that answer. Was it envy that was lurking about?
No, that was lust.
Lust.
You have not seen envy's true face yet.
So lust, for some reason, but we did see envy. It was the one that took over the priest.
Yes, but you have not seen their true face yet.
Right. I got confused because I remembered her from the previous, but I couldn't remember if it was lust or envy, and I got
lust is kind of like
she's sexual.
I would call her the ringleader. She's a ringleader.
And that's fair. But we see that lust is trying to convince this one prick, Mugiar, to craft more stones. At least that's what they're using those brothers for. Because Mugiar is not an alchemist.
No.
And he attempts alchemy, but he has like some little weapon that I'm assuming he got from lust, because he just does not seem to be the type to craft such a thing. So she probably gifted him this little device that uses red stones to perform alchemy in some form. Which, how does that work? I mean, I understand he put the red stones in it, but how does that? Is it just whatever he thinks of, and then the red stones kind of become that gift of what do you call it? equal exchange, and then he can kind of do that, I guess.
Yeah, think of alchemy as, I mean, you have to have a idea. So, like, your intention is what's going to bring forth something.
And we got a lot of that later on in this episode, or in the second part. We're talking about it as one whole.
Yes.
It is a two-parter, but it was one full episode, so just kind of hang with us as we're breaking through it.
Yes.
But the townspeople, don't trust our real Elric brothers, and Fletcher, the little brother.
Yes.
He catches Al trying to get some medicine because, what was it, a cough or something like that?
Yes.
Yeah.
The little girl has a cough. Well, several people in the town have coughs, but the medicine was for the little girl.
Right. So they were trying to get, or Al was trying to get medicine. Townspeople were like, get the hell out of here. We don't trust you. And then Fletcher helps him get the cough medicine for the little girl. And then that allows Fletcher and Al to kind of become acquainted and talk to each other. And they are very similar in a lot of regards.
Yes.
And they relate to that because, as Fletcher kind of explains his deal with his father, Al can relate. And then he starts mentioning their father, and they just kind of have this moment where they have an understanding. It's about, they connect because of their fathers and being absent and whatnot. So Ed decides that they're going to kind of sneak into the little lab and try to, figure out what they're up to. And they use a little mole hole idea, which I guess works. And,
I mean, it does.
Yeah, no, it works. And they come into contact with this chemical red water, which they find out their people are using to create, or I guess the Tringham brothers are trying to use to create stones, the red stones. But they also find out it's toxic, hence the masks, and that's why people are coughing and having this issue. And obviously they've made these stones. They've been trying to make these stones. Now, did they... My understanding is that they were creating the stones for gold?
Yes, they were creating the stones to basically replenish the gold mine.
Okay.
Well, that's what the bad guy wanted.
Mugyar.
Yeah, that one. That's what he wanted, but it all kind of boils down to he just wanted to line his pockets with money. The boys, that's the only way they could continue their father's research. So they wanted it more for themselves and to eventually hopefully find their father, because they were under the impression that he was still alive. And, that's kind of why they're there. They don't want the fame and the fortune and the, money and all that crap. They were just using the Elric brothers' names so they could obtain, the information that they needed for the red water, because that guy had it.
Right. And when they face off with the Tringham brothers, the Elric brothers versus the Tringham brothers, they kind of have a little face off using alchemy.
Well, the two older brothers.
Right. Face off in the sense that, they're trying to show what they can do. And Russell whips out like a hose to pretty much gush them down. And he was willing to kill Ed with this toxic water, but obviously Ed is smarter than that and makes an umbrella. But then I was kind of surprised by this because Fletcher kind of jumps in the way, like to kind of block or almost protect Ed in some way, but he's not harmed by whatever happens. And so
yeah, because his brother did make it sound like if you got just touched by it, it was like instant death.
Yeah.
But you can also think of it as, one, I can't imagine that that's honestly how it was supposed to work in the first place, considering both of these boys have literally worked around this liquid.
Right.
2, I kind of take it as he's a child and he's just trying to be intimidating and scary and hoping, he's got enough gumption behind it to be realistic. But yes, his little brother gets hit by it, and you can kind of see where he's like, it almost like it drains him.
Yeah.
But it's not like it physically hurts him to the point where like he's coughing or passing out like how Ed was when he was around it.
Yeah. So after that happens, I guess guards, townspeople, whatever, they come a knocking.
Yes.
And then the Elric brothers say, let's cheese it, and they jump out a window. Mm-hmm. And that's when we get a look at Mugiar's little weapon that he has, and he uses that on the Tringham brothers and pretty much locks them away and then he even calls them out saying, I know you're not the real Elric brothers. I've just been using you, yada, yada, because you're dad. And then that's when we kind of get this flashback to seeing their father, where he comes back into town. And we have that the moment where we mentioned where he just seems troubled by something. Like he's just, you can't quite figure out what it is that's got him bothered, because he's been away all this time. And he comes back and he's just like, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to mess with it. Like it's almost like he's learned something about the red water. He's just like, not a good thing. And he's talking to Belcio about it. And Belcio, again, is just like, all right, well, if you say so. But then Mugiar shows back up and he's like, well, the town's going to die. And I'm under the impression, because they do kind of a jump from that moment where he's like guilt tripping Nash into using the red stone again for gold. They talk about the town going back into prosperity, but people get sick. That was the other thing. A lot of townsfolk got very sick and very ill.
Not just townfolk in general. When they first started it up, which was when Nash came back to town, or, a period after he came back to town, it was specifically babies. Yeah. They lost a lot of babies.
And then they specifically showed Alyssa being very sick, but she got better, obviously.
And then a doctor who will come back into play shows up and heals her with what is presumed to be the Philosopher's Stone.
See, I guess I missed. Little details I just seemed to miss. So I just thought she got better. So after all this sickness and illness happens, Nash is like, I'm out. I'll see you later. I'm done. Like, he just doesn't want anything to do with it. So we assume he just left. But it's also very much implied he was murdered by Mugiar.
Yes.
So,
as far as we know, he is dead.
Yeah. So, after Mugiar and the Elric brothers they have like a conflict. Like they meet each other, and he's like, "Oh, I didn't know that they were fake." Ha ha ha. Like he's bullshitting them. Like, come on, dude.
Well, again, he's an adult, and he looks at them like, they're nothing but ignorant children, and that he can manipulate them because he manipulated the other two,
right?
But what he fails to realize, and what Ed loves to point out, is that don't underestimate him. He doesn't need a stone to be powerful. He has freaking talent that nobody in that situation there can match up to him,
right?
Like, Russell caught him off guard a couple times, but as far as Ed's strength and his ability, nobody there could match up to him, and Edward knew it.
So, pretty much as Mugiar is bullshitting him, Ed bullshits back and is like, hey, let's go deal with those Stricken brothers. We can go and just kill them. And does his little smirk and is just like, we can just off him, and that's that. So, he pretty much says that they should go kill the Tringham brothers.
No, he flat out says that he is going to off them, And even makes the comment of it's been a while since he's killed anyone. And then that's when he does the little smile and his eye just like turns towards him. It is like, I don't know. I freaking love that scene. It's one of those that just makes me giggle every time because he's trying so hard and he passes it for being a hard ass and actually has this man believing that he's going to murder these 2 kids, being a freaking child himself. And then as soon as the guy accepts it, Edward's just like freaking whoo. And then Al's little face when it comes down, he's just like, ha. I love it.
So they confront the Tringham brothers, and the Elric brothers then kind of turn on Mugiar and call him out for his bullshit about Nash's murder. And that's when they all kind of team up, if you will, as Mugiar whips out his little alchemy gun and just like loads it up with red stones, like he's got a pocket full.
Yeah, literally.
Just loads it up like it's a little pellet gun and just like start bang, 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 bang. And it really turns into like a multi-barrel
it does.
pistol.
It goes all freaking the mask.
Yeah. So he's just like blasting away at them. They fight back and they use their alchemy and almost kind of get him. But then after they think they get him, he gets away under the panels of the floor into the mine, so they have to go after him. And once they chase him into the mines, obviously they're right there with all that
red
water, and they have another showdown trying to beat him down. He gets crushed by a boulder during this showdown,
he does.
Fuck him. And I'm all for it. But then obviously all the commotion underneath causes the mines to collapse. Then they're trying to contain the red water because now it's seeping out everywhere. So now they've got to figure out what to do. Ed kind of holds it back from getting to them, but then all that does is allow it to seep out of the mountain. So when they get back outside, they have to figure out how we're going to stop this, or it's going to go into the town and it's going to kill everybody. So they work up this little alchemy. I don't want to call it a spell. I don't know why I want to call these spells.
Yeah, well, I mean, they are kind of like spells, and I feel like that's why, you meet characters and stuff like that in the show that, think of it as like a blessing or as magic or something like that. And the boys are always quick to point it out, no, it's science. So to them, their world, alchemy is science. It's no different than, if we were making medicine or gadgets or whatever.
Sure. It just comes off very magic-y.
Yeah. But yeah, Edward creates a barrier around, I guess it'd be like the mansion where everything's kind of seeping out to hold in the water. But then, of course, now you have a giant reservoir of toxic water.
But then Fletcher whips out an alchemy spell. I'm just going to call him spell because I don't know what else to call it. He whips out an alchemy spell that allows the trees to absorb the water and contain it. And then I thought they were just going to be red trees, and then they turned blue, and then they evaporated into the air. And it killed all the red water and I guess saved the town.
Yes.
And now everybody's free of the red water. But what does that mean for the town? Because they never touched on that. Because if this town was hemorrhaging money and needed gold to survive, they don't have red water. They don't have ways to have gold anymore. They don't have tourists. Well, no, this wasn't the tourist one. I don't know what I was thinking.
No, well, they did mention that people came there, but it was to buy gold.
Gotcha.
But I think it's kind of left as because the brothers are staying, that, they're going to basically find a way to help the town.
Gotcha.
To where they don't have to rely on the gold or find another way to prosper. So they're staying behind to, help what they were taking advantage of.
Which they should,
Yeah,
like their
between their father and them, a lot of people died. So
the Tringham brothers see the Elric brothers off, and they kind of come to an understanding, or at least Ed and Russell do,
Mm-hmm.
where you see that they're just like, hey, if I can help you out. Even Russell offers to give Ed the formula on how to create a red stone. And Ed's like, nah, I don't need it. Appreciate it though, but I'm good. Which, fair enough. I mean, he knows it's not what he's after. It's not the actual stone he needs. Yep. So why would you want a fake one? So he passes on that. And then as they're riding away on the train, they get a letter.
Yeah.
Ed comes to learn the realization that one thing we've not mentioned is Russell's very tall. He seems like he should be about, 17.
Yeah, I would say like he looks like he'd be 17 or 18 while, was it Fletcher?
Yeah, Fletcher, probably about 10.
Yeah, I would say about 10. Like he looks really young.
But then in the letter, we come to learn that Russell's a year younger than Ed.
He's the same age as Al.
Yeah. And boy, did that just set Ed off. How can you find out? So apparently Ed is not just short for his age. He's just short. That's his.
No. Okay. He does get a growth spurt. He does grow.
Okay.
My boy do grow. He's short for now. He's one of those late bloomers.
Gotcha.
I think it's because he's so angry. It just keeps him so tiny.
Well, yeah, he's definitely an angry boy because every time someone there were numerous times where his height was brought up. And I felt like there was one time his height was brought up in this and he didn't quite snap like he normally does. It's like he just took it in stride and was like, huh. And then just kind of let it go. And I was like, he's not going to blow up over that? Okay. But maybe it didn't feel like an actual slight against his height. Mm-hmm. It just seemed, I don't know, there was something about it that I guess it didn't feel like the need to blow up. And I was surprised still that he didn't, because he's taken everything that felt like a jab and turned it into something big. But he let that one go.
Are you talking about the one where the little girl says it?
I think so,
and he goes all white?
Yeah.
I honestly think it's because it's a little girl.
Yeah, it was just like he was speechless. He's like,
Yeah, but that was like right after, she thought Alphonse was his father. So
and they thought
both had
Alphonse,
those little shock moments.
didn't they think Alphonse was his older brother?
Well, she said that's what made him go all shocky was when he said that he wasn't his father, he was actually his younger brother. And she said, shouldn't it, be different or whatever because Ed's so short? But I think the other brothers mention or ask about, the fact that Edward's the older brother and he's so small compared to Al. And it's so unfair because in reality, Al would be smaller than Edward.
Too true.
But, it's one of those things he's got to deal with, and he continues to deal with it.
Come on. He's got a complex is all.
Yeah, he does. He's got that little short man complex. But he's adorable, and he's still a kid. Like, you can't, 15. Late bloomers. It's okay. You'll get there. We know he gets there.
So they haven't gone back into their past as of yet.
No.
We're still kind of maintaining the 15, 14 age. And I was, not to say that I was surprised by that, but even through 3 episodes, I thought maybe at some point we're going to yank it back a little bit. But given how the narrative is going, I'm assuming we're going to hit a pivot point to where we'll need to go back in time. Like, they're not just going to do that willy-nilly, much like they did episode 1 and 2 was just kind of introductory. And then it's like, all right, now we're going to come back. And then we're going to kind of give you their backstory to where you need it to up to now.
Yes. Come
back to the present day. And then go up to a point to where we've gotten to a point where we need to go back again to explain things. Kind of like where you said everything's connected. We're just going to follow this path until we have to go back and then get more exposition in the past to then explain the future.
Yes.
Or present day. I guess present day is a proper term. or whatever.
Yeah,
it's not present day anyway. We know it's like not present day to us.
No, wouldn't be present day to us when it came out.
Yeah, true. But yeah, it's I thought this would be a fun one to do just together because it was a 2-parter. And granted, I guess the first episode could have been done as such, but they weren't labeled that way. These were actually labeled part 1 and part 2. So it just seemed like, hey, let's just cram them together and talk about it as a whole because clearly it's a 2-parter. So it was a good episode. I liked that there were parallels to the Elric brothers and the Tringham brothers, where we actually got to see 2 other sets of characters that they had someone to relate to. They could look at them and be like, they're just like us. But obviously there are differences to be had, but they can relate to them on so many levels because they understand pretty much a lot of the same things that they've gone through with an absent father and being an alchemist, having a famous alchemist father. And I mean, I wouldn't say Nash is like Hohenheim in that same regard.
Well,
but he seems regarded in that town as such.
Nash would have been better known as far as military. There are several people within the military that know Hohenheim, but not all of them know Hohenheim.
Gotcha.
Whereas Nash, I would say more people would probably know him, especially if he was famous for the Red Water. And with him being famous for the Red Water and other characters that you will end up seeing further into it who kind of get their hands within, the Red Water and Philosopher Stones and everything, all play a big part in the past.
Okay. I don't really have much more to say about it.
All right. Well, then lead us out.
Okay. Well, Weebs, you know where to go. Find us on your favorite podcasting platform. Tell all your favorite anime fans to find us on whatever podcasting platform they listen on. And if they listen on YouTube, they can go to youtube.com/pencilpaperproductions and listen on YouTube. They can listen early on Patreon at patreon.com/pencilpaperproductions, or you can go to pencilpaperproductions.com/inspiredweeaboo to keep up with any and all new episodes.
All right, my little weebs. We'll see you next time.
This has been a Pencil and Paper Podcast Network production.